I love Australia. It's one of my favorite countries to visit. It has such unique wildlife like kangaroos, and the Bondi Beach Walk might be my favorite place in the world to walk. But the increase in Sinophobia in Australian political circles is troubling. Earlier, Erica Betts, a Liberal Party senator for Tasmania, asked during a hearing investigating the issues that affect diaspora communities in Australia if 3 Chinese Australians, one of whom was born in Australia, would publicly and directly denounce Beijing and unconditionally condemn the Chinese Communist Party dictatorship. His line of questioning harkened back to the McCarthy era in the United States, when individuals were accused, without evidence, of treason because of their supposed Communist Party membership. Eric didn't ask these questions of any non-ethnically Chinese people. None. He was race baiting. Plain and simple. Even more upsetting is that Australia's Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, did not condemn Betts' line of questioning. In fact, Morrison has been a bad actor. He implemented a travel ban for China on February 1st, but didn't for Italy, where COVID was spreading rapidly, until the middle of March. China and Australia are natural trade partners. There is no evident reason for tension. In fact, 3 years ago, when I interviewed mainland Chinese consumers, the majority said Australia and New Zealand were the 2 countries they held in highest esteem. Over the years, the number of Chinese studying in Australia has consistently increased. In 2018, for example, almost 30% of all international students were from mainland China. Mainland investors invested $4.2 billion into the residential and commercial construction markets in the last year. However, Chinese investment into Australia has dropped almost 50% in 2020 because of political tension between the 2 countries. Before COVID, China bought 38% of Australia's exports, or over 6% of the country's GDP. That number has increased to over 45% in the past 3 months. But Australia must be careful in its relationship with China and not bite the hand that feeds it. Now let me tell you a quick story. I used to exclusively visit one very famous international hotel chain. I was a member of their highest VIP membership level, but then they started treating me like dirt. So I switched hotel chains. There was no economic coercion here. It was just a classic example of the customer not being treated well. Why should China keep buying Australian beef, wine, and coal when Scott Morrison treats his largest client like dirt? Why should Chinese students go to Australia to study? Why should Chinese tourists go to Australia for tourism? Now, Australians critical of China say they can sell to other countries, but I don't think India will buy Australian beef, and Muslim countries won't buy its wine. The increasingly hardline stance towards China taken by the Morrison government will be devastating to Australia's economy, which faces its first recession in 30 years. Now, 3 groups are behind this increasing xenophobia and fear-mongering about China's rise. The first are think tanks, like the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. ASPI has, in its past, received funding from governments including the US and China's Taiwan region, as well as arms dealers, like Lockheed Martin. Second, the Murdoch media monopoly. Murdoch's News Corp Australia owns approximately 70% of all newspaper circulation in Australia and spreads xenophobia. His papers hint that Chinese Australians are linked to the Communist Party of China and calls COVID-19 the China virus. Third, selfish politicians like Erica Betts and Andrew Hastie, who are looking to make a name for themselves, spread fear about China's rise. Now let me say clearly, this xenophobia and racism in Australian political circles must stop. China and Australia should return to close economic partnership, the way they were 3 years ago, before Morrison started to damage the relationship.